It is Medicinal Food Science Week 2, and before I forget, I would like to recommend a book if you are into a bit of homesteading or preserving, if you have a big garden or you get given large amounts of fruit and veg. I recommend the first book by Met and Lentil Purbridge. It's called Grown and Gathered, and it has a huge chapter on preserving all sorts of items at the back cover, and they give you some really good no-nonsense instructions how to go about it. So what did you go through today in your lecture? You looked at again at Food Standards Australia and New Zealand. It is our major authority on what happens with our food, and they have some very interesting aspects to it. So for example, you can check on additives that are permitted to be put into our food. I believe there is a PDF or other file on 7 pages of additives that are allowed. I also recommend my patients use an app for additives called Additive Alert. That's a free one on Android. And the Bill Statham one, the chemical maze, is excellent. I think you pay for that one, but it's well worth having, and it tells you the Additive Alert is really short and sweet, and whether you should go, yay or nay on this food. So label reading is a bit of an art form, and sometimes I also recommend to my patients, look, if there are so many ingredients, or as a rule of thumb, if there are more than 4 ingredients and you may not even be able to understand what they are because of language, then maybe forego that one and buy something different. I always say the best ingredient is this. It doesn't require a food label. Everybody can see that that is a radish, and so yeah, you're safe with these. And we're going to I'm going to show you how to make a really simple radish ferment today. Let me just look on my notes. Yeah, so they are on food labels. Sometimes you read claims, and again, that's a good point of teaching for you guys, that you can do with your patients. What does it actually mean? How relevant is that to your patient? There's food that is genetically modified, and I avoid this simply because there is no really long-term research out on what effect that may have. So I rather be careful with it. I also don't buy the argument that we need GMO to, otherwise we may run out of food. I will listen to that argument when we don't throw away 1/3 of what we're already producing. 1/3, guys, gets thrown away. 1/3 of the food that is produced never reaches our households. And even when it does reach our households, a lot is wasted due to food spoilage. So have a think about that one. So there's a whole lot of ways how you can preserve your food. So there's chilling, drying, freezing, fermenting, canning, pasteurizing, salting, smoking, pickling, and you can pick and choose, and I think you should. If you do it at home, why not employ different methods? I love preserving my harvest or stuff that gets given to me. So for example, I pickle my own olives, also thanks to Met and Lentil. I would have never done it had they not put a simple process that only takes 3 days to water your olives, and then you keep them in a very salty brine for up to 6 months to develop beautiful flavor, and for the tannins to break down and the olives to not be so bitter. Then actually, I didn't want to show you this one. This is fermented Jerusalem artichokes to with a bit of turmeric I've got in there, and you can see that the liquid is cloudy, and that is a sign that that has fermented. When you start your ferment, as you will see, it'll be clear, and as soon as it turns cloudy, you know that the bacteria and yeasts are working, turning those carbohydrates into lactic acid and gas. When you see this cloudiness, fermenting Jerusalem artichokes does decrease the gassiness of the FODMAPs in the Jerusalem artichokes, these lovely prebiotics. However, I still would not eat Jerusalem artichokes on my first date. You get the hint. So here I just fermented, and again you can see the cloudiness there at the bottom. It's not quite so cloudy as the Jerusalem artichokes. That is bok choy with cumin, pretty yummy. And here I'm happy that I did that, so I can demonstrate to you what you can do with the whole plant. So you're not just using that lovely red stuff here, but you also use the leaves. You can actually ferment them and then use them a bit like vine leaves, or just chop them up and mix them through a salad as the salty component for your salad, or in lieu of salad dressing with a bit of olive oil and lemon juice. Really lovely way to use these leaves. Another way to use them is to make a gorgeous creamy soup by just frying off your onion and garlic, adding those leaves, a bit of broth or just salty water and a few spices, a bit of cream, cook that. You can add a potato for a bit more substance, or a few carrots, and then blitz it up. Beautiful creamy soup. So next, this what I just showed you were all ferments. This is a pickle, and pickle is basically, the basic pickling liquid is half acid, half water, plus spices, bit of salt and sugar. And here I pickled, I don't know, yeah, you should be able to see it. So that is purslane. It's a wheat, and it's high in plant omega-3 essential fatty acids, so linoleic acid, and some zucchinis. So that was from late summer when I needed to use up all these tromboncino zucchinis that were rambling all over my garden. So, and I've got two other pickles here. One is a turnip pickle, and I had some beetroot pickling liquid over, so I just used that to pickle them, and that looks hence the pretty color. And so this is actually a radish pickle, and you can see it also turned red, so the color from the skin dissolved in the pickling liquid and made it red. So they've lost their lovely red around the sides. Was there anything else? Yes. So yes, and the last example of the stuff that I do is hot liquid in a hot jar method preserving. So basically you cook. This is I had so many clingy peaches this year, so I just cooked them into a compote, rinsed my jar. You do this every time. Anything you preserve, the glasses must be squeaky clean. So thoroughly washed, and then I just pour them out with boiling water from the kettle, and the lid as well. And once I have filled it, the lid goes on immediately, as hot as possible. I sit it on its head so that the hot liquid again sterilizes the lid, and after a minute or so I put it back the normal way, and then I watch for the lid to be sucked in to know that it's perfectly sealed. It usually does that, and seriously, with this method I may lose one jar in 100 jars, so that's a pretty good method. There you go. So let's get into our radish pickling. This is a really simple recipe, and you can you can pickle all sorts of items with it. You could pickle bok choy stems with it. You can pickle broccoli and cauliflower and capsicum with it. And so what I'll do, I'll just slice the radishes in thin slices, like so. What might be 2 to 3 2 millimeter slices. And if you have a mandolin, you can use your mandolin doing this, because that gives you nice regular slices. I'm a bit afraid of mandolins. I took part of my finger off one time with it, so I am just sticking to the good old cutting method, and I've got pretty good cutting skills. And I've got my grandmother's cute old kitchen knife that she passed on to me when she died, so I'm very happy with my little knife. It's not even, they were so poor back in Poland, they didn't even have stainless steel anything, so this is just an iron blade, and you just have to make sure you put it away dry, otherwise it goes rusty on you. So I just left one radish entire just to demonstrate. So you take it off as close as possible to the grain, and as little as possible of this the tail end. So that's the last radish going in. And then the flavorings, you can go minimal and put nothing in, just your salty brine, or you can put some spices in. So there's your radishes. Oops, I missed one. I like dill seeds. These are homegrown dill seeds. I love dill, but I've also got some fresh dill which I'm going to use today. So I'm not going to use dill and dill seeds. Bit of overkill. I've got this lovely fennel, which is so aromatic and aniseedy. It's wild fennel that I found growing on a walk, and I just picked a few flowers and put them in, dried them, and put it in there. It's absolutely this scent. Oh, it's beautiful. But today, as in the recipe, I'm going to use mustard seeds, which is a traditional pickling or fermenting spice. So to peel my garlic, I always give it just a bit of a crush, so that the skin comes off really readily, and you don't have to fiddle with it so much. And here we go. Love the smell of garlic. And so I just cut this in little slices or little spears, whatever you want to call it. In it goes. And I've got my quarter of an onion here. I cut this in lovely little also thin slices. The thinner you cut everything, the faster the pickling, your pickle, or sorry, I shouldn't say pickle, that pertains to pickle. When you slice them thinly, the faster the pickling liquid will flavor your veggie. In this case, I just like it because it looks pretty, and when you put your pickle on the plate with the onion through it, it's just a really nice look. So I've got my 2 sprigs of dill here, and I'll just tear it into smaller bits so as to make the filling into my jar a bit easier. I've got my mustard seeds here, and I'll put a teaspoon. So that's like red mustard goes in, and a teaspoon of that. That's all my ingredients in there. Now what I'll do, I've got a larger serving spoon, and I'm just going to mix this a little bit so that I've got a nice mix of spices and radishes. And now I've got my jar, which I have rinsed with boiling water and the lid as well, and I just closed it so that in the process of me walking around here, nothing will go in there and I know it's sterile. When I put jars away that I get from, usually I get lots of friends who know that I'm preserving a lot, and I reward them with giving them a nice preserve. I make sure that they are painstakingly dry, really, really dry. I never close a lid on anything that's not perfectly dry. That is the best way, seriously, to avoid contamination or bacterial overgrowth in your household. You will never see a rag overnight just in a puddle. I will spread it out and make sure it dries. Bacteria find it very difficult to grow where there is no moisture. So the drier you keep your dry foodstuffs, the less likely you will have contamination. And you generally then don't need any disinfectants and so forth. I use no disinfectant. I just keep things clean, and I get new rags every 2 days to also avoid bacteria growing in there. And I just put them through the wash. So the easiest way to fill a jar is to hold it level, and then to just put your items in there. If you have a wider mouth, that is even easier, but this should be fine. And you want to make sure that your spoon is able to be pushed into the jar, because that makes filling easier. Yeah, so that's just a little bit of a process, and it's good. So it's so pretty with the fresh green in there. So you can shove it and push it a bit. It is ideal to have the jar filled up pretty much, and different fermenting person will tell you different methods. I have tried a few. However, I really would like you. I've got clean hands, so I'm just gonna push this in. That this basic equipment that you just saw is all you need to start your fermenting fun. Seriously, you do not need any seal and valves and bells and whistles. A jar, a brine is all you need. I usually have brine sitting. So there you go. This is my jar, pretty full. This is what I'm after. And in my pantry, I usually keep a jar of brine. So this is about. I usually mix 1 tablespoon of sea salt on 2 cups of water, and in more technical terms, we generally use brines at 2 to 5%. With olives, you use up to 10% because they've got such strong tannins. So all you need to do now is to pour your pickling liquid onto your food stuff, and there you go. That's lovely and full, so as to not spill anything. What I'll do, I'll just put this on loosely. Sorry. And I'm giving it a bit of a, can't see that. What I'm trying to do is to get the air bubbles out. Yeah, they're all coming up. There you go. And which means the air bubbles are out, and then I top it up right to the rim. So in some recipes you see something like the sacrificial leaf. So for example, if you were to make a sauerkraut, you would retain one of the clean outer leaves, roll it up, put this on the top, and what that does is it pushes the food back into the brine, because anything that protrudes can grow mold. and that you would like to avoid. So on the sacrificial leaf there will be mold, and you just remove that, into the compost it goes, and everything underneath is fine. Sometimes when you ferment you get what you call a calm yeast, that is just a gray whitish layer on top of your ferment. That's harmless, and you can just ladle that off and eat what's underneath. However, any other growth, throw the whole glass. Don't risk it. You should never risk food poisoning. So what I'll do, there's a bit of a sprig of dill pushing, poking out. I'll just put that in. So now, just make sure this is full. I just put my lid on there ever so loosely so that it's just holding, but it's not entirely closed, because once fermentation starts, it'll expand due to the gas production, and it'll bubble over. So what you do, you always put your ferment on a jar so that the liquid gets caught. There you go. It's cold at the minute in Melbourne, so you need this will need at least 5 days in the colder weather, unless you put it on a coffee machine or something, and it should turn cloudy probably only after 2 days because of the cooler temperatures we're having. I hope you're going to try this and have a lovely session. Otherwise, ciao.